A mochi moment from Mark, who writes, I just want to thank you for making GLP-1s affordable. What would have been over $1,000 a month is just $99 a month with Mochi. Money shouldn't be a barrier to healthy weight. 3 months in, and I have smaller jeans and a bigger wallet. You're the best. Thanks, Mark. I'm Myra Ahmed, founder of Mochi Health. To find your Mochi moment, visit joinmochi.com.
Mark is a Mochi member compensated for his story.
This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Shopify. Starting a business is filled with a lot of what-ifs. What if I fail? What if nobody listens to the podcast? What if nobody cares? It can definitely be hard to get over that doubt and uncertainty, but making that leap was one of the best things I've ever done, and it's great to know that I'm not alone with a business partner like Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world, and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Heinz and Mattel to brands just getting started. And I'm telling you, their tools really do feel like you have a business partner. They have hundreds of ready-to-use templates to help build a beautiful online store that matches your brand. You can also get the word out like you have an entire marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And if you get stuck, Shopify is always there to help with their award-winning 24/7 customer service. It's time to turn those what-ifs into with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/justice. Go to shopify.com/justice. That's shopify.com/justice. Voices for Justice is a podcast that uses adult language and discusses sensitive and potentially triggering topics, including violence, abuse, and murder. This podcast may not be appropriate for younger audiences. All parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Some names have been changed or omitted per their request or for safety purposes. Listener discretion is advised. My name is Sarah Turney, and this is Voices for Justice. Today, I'm discussing the case of Patricia Meehan. On the night of April 20th, 1989, a desolate stretch of highway near Circle, Montana was plunged into chaos. After a head-on collision, a woman emerged from the wreckage dazed, but seemingly unharmed. She wasn't frantic or crying for help. Instead, she was unnervingly silent. After the accident, she climbed a fence, watched the aftermath for a moment, and then just walked away into the Montana night, sparking a decades-long mystery fueled by theories of profound amnesia and thousands of unconfirmed sightings across the country. This is the case of Patricia Meehan. Patricia Bernadette Meehan is by all accounts a kind and gentle soul. She was born on November 1st, 1951, to her parents Thomas and Dolly Meehan in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We don't know much about her early life, but she does have a few siblings, Terry, Timmy, and Eileen. As everyone grew up and moved out of their parents' house, the siblings spread out across the country. Timmy went to Florida, Eileen went to Massachusetts, and Patricia pursued a degree in early childhood development at Oklahoma City College. This seemed like a great fit for her. While she didn't have kids of her own, she loved working with kids. She even found love in Oklahoma when she began dating a man named Kurt Fletchel. They lived together for a few years in the mid-'80s before they eventually broke up and Kurt moved back to Spokane, Washington, where his family was from. And it's around this time that Patricia makes another major change in her life. She decides to move to Bozeman, Montana in 1985 to go work as a ranch hand. Just as she loved working with kids, she also loved working with animals. So while it was definitely a big change, she also flourished here and seemed to be happy. She worked on ranches during the summer, and in the winter months, when there was less work there, she babysat for local families. But her mom Dolly does say that it was around this time that she noticed her daughter's smile fading in family photos. Dolly has said that as Patricia was entering her mid-30s, she began to think that she might have missed her opportunity to have the traditional 1980s nuclear family. A husband, a few kids, and a home with a white picket fence. I will say that what Patricia really wanted in life is a bit unclear. This sentiment really only comes from one snippet of one interview that I could find. But what we know for sure is that about 6 months after her 37th birthday in 1989, she's ready for another major change in her life. On April 19th, she calls her dad back home in Pittsburgh and tells him that she's under a lot of stress and wants to come home. Without hesitation, he immediately says, yes, come home. Now, Patricia also tells him that she saw a doctor that day, who'd referred her to see a psychologist to see the following day on the 20th. Patricia also wasn't a big fan of flying, so her dad devises a plan. He says, listen, I don't want you driving across the country alone, and I know you don't want to fly, so go see the psychologist tomorrow, give me a call when you're done, and we'll come up with a plan to get you back home. Now, there are a lot of theories and conflicting reporting about exactly when and why Patricia was going to see this psychologist, so I want to read you a quote directly from her father. Thomas Meehan said, quote, she was under some sort of stress, and her doctor was sending her to a psychologist in the morning. She asked if she could come home, and I said sure. She didn't like to fly, and I didn't want her driving in her condition. I told her to call after she saw the psychologist that day. I wanted to figure out how we could get her home. End quote. So Patricia and her father end the phone call with a plan to sync up the following day. Everything seems relatively fine. But that call never came. The following evening, April 20th, just after 8 p.m., Patricia was driving 300 miles northeast of Bozeman, Montana, just outside the city of Circle, when her car crossed over the center line. In the other lane was Peggy Bueller, who was able to swerve out of the way. Behind her is police dispatcher Carol Heights. She sees this happening and quickly pulls over to the side of the road, but Patricia still hit her head-on. Peggy is shaken up. She's also with her parents, so her dad takes over, turns around, and drives back to the scene of the crash. And they all watch Carol and Patricia crawl out of their vehicles. It's a terrible crash, but it seems like both women are okay. We know for sure that Carol only suffered minor injuries. Patricia's injuries are less clear. Carol says that when she saw Patricia, her eyes were starry like she was in shock, and that she really just looked right through her. Here's Carol speaking with Unsolved Mysteries in 1989.
She just stared. Never said anything. Nothing. Just stared at me. So I will never forget her.
Now, Peggy's dad stays at the scene to help Patricia and Carol while Peggy drives away to call the police. But Peggy did see the scene before driving away. Here's what she told Unsolved Mysteries.
As I looked out across the accident, I noticed someone on the other side of the fence standing there like a spectator, not like that it had happened to her.
Patricia had left the accident site, climbed a fence, and just stared at them. Then she calmly walked deeper into the field and out of sight into the night. This episode of Voices for Justice is sponsored by Chewy. If you have pets, you probably know about Chewy, and you also know that when they say that they have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy, they're not messing around. To keep them happy, Chewy has over 100,000 products from all the brands my pets love at prices I love. To keep them healthy, Chewy offers pet prescriptions, pet insurance, telehealth vet visits, and they're even rolling out vet clinics across the country. I've been shopping with them for a very long time. And in addition to the auto-ship feature that gets the dog's food to them every single month, I also love to experiment with different treats. But I'm a bit picky. For me, it has to be high quality with simple ingredients. I recently picked up treats from Shepherd Boy Farms that are 100% just chicken breast. Popcorn and Heber are already obsessed. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. And right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewpanions.chewy.com/Sarah E. Turney. That's chewpanions.chewy.com/Sarah E. Turney to save $20 on your first order with free shipping. chewpanions.chewy.com/Sarah E. Turney. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
When officers get to the scene of the crash on the night of April 20th, they not only have the accident to worry about, but now they have a missing woman on their hands. They trace Patricia's car back to her, and luckily they do get to work searching for her right away. They brought out dogs who searched by moonlight, and they were able to track her scent, but then the trail just stopped. Unfortunately, the reporting I found doesn't go into a ton of detail. So whether the trail stopped at a road, a mountain, in the field, we just don't know. But they lose the scent. They also find tracks from a smaller-sized tennis shoe that they believe may belong to Patricia or a young boy. She was wearing a pair of Reeboks that most reporting says were traditionally worn by men. So take that for what you will. But just like the scent, eventually they can't follow the tracks either, and the search ends for the night. The next morning, there is a line of people ready to help search, and Patricia's family immediately hires a helicopter to look for her too as they get to the scene as quickly as they can. But the helicopter doesn't see her or any trace of her anywhere. They also can't pinpoint where she was going. While the route she was taking could eventually lead her to Pittsburgh back home with her parents, if that was where she was going, she was taking a longer route than she needed to. So right now, they're not really sure where she was planning on going, but they do theorize that she might have snuck into a hay truck that was about a half a mile from the accident site. But like so many things in this case, that could never be confirmed. The other theory is that she was picked up by someone against her will, or that she hitchhiked away from the crash site. I mean, it seems very possible at this point that Patricia may have thought that she harmed someone in the crash, or at the very least was just afraid of being in trouble for the damage that she caused. But the other, and to this day most prevailing theory, was that she hit her head in the crash and may be suffering from a terrible head injury or amnesia. They searched for her every single day for over a week. They had search teams, ATVs, horses, more dogs. They even searched local mine shafts in the area after a psychic from Florida called in to say that that's where she'd be found. But again, there was just nothing. And really, while these searches by law enforcement began to wind down, Patricia's family was just getting started. The way they all showed up for her is really best case scenario for any missing person case. Her parents and siblings fly out, even one of her nieces joins in the search. The media quickly shares Patricia's information too. She's 37, 5'3", weighs about 105 pounds. She has strawberry blonde hair past her shoulders, green-gray eyes and freckles. She looks younger than her age. Last seen wearing blue jeans, white high-top Reeboks with a blue stripe, carrying a brown leather purse, and she has a mild East Coast accent. And really, immediately, people began calling the police to say that they've seen her. And while law enforcement did follow these leads, it was her family that had boots in the ground across the country to try to verify these sightings. They create a flyer, they set aside money for a reward fund, and they bring physical videotapes of Patricia to show anyone who says they may have seen her. So let's talk about some of these early sightings. On May 4th, a police officer nearly 700 miles away from the crash site in Laverne, Minnesota, says that without a doubt he saw Patricia at a diner. Well, 2 diners actually. According to the server, the woman spent 5 hours at the diner just drinking water until they closed at 11 p.m. Then she looked out the window and went to Country Kitchen across the street, which was open 24 hours. When this woman went to the second diner, the police officer approached her and asked her if she was okay. I mean, clearly whoever this was seemed to be going through something. So he goes up to her, he asks her name, but she refuses to give it. So he asks her where she's from, and she says Israel, but then backtracks and says Colorado. It's definitely an odd encounter. but she's not doing anything illegal, so the officer can't do anything. And at this point, he's not familiar with Patricia's case, so he just leaves her alone. But once he sees a photo of Patricia, he's pretty sure that the woman he encountered is her. And when her family shows him a video of her, he says without a doubt that the woman he saw was Patricia. After this encounter, Dolly Meehan told Jill Sunby for the Billings Gazette, quote, "This is not like her. We think she has amnesia, that she is confused and scared. We're quite sure she does not know who she is." End quote. At this point, this is considered to be a confirmed sighting of Patricia Meehan. And there are 2 more sightings the following day about 30 miles west of Laverne in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. A cashier at a Rentschler's truck stop says that she saw someone who looked like Patricia at the diner there from 12 a.m. to 6 a.m. when her shift ended. The server who worked the next shift confirmed that she too saw the same woman from 6 a.m. to about 11:30 a.m. They say that this woman, maybe Patricia, was sitting, drinking coffee, and just laughing to herself. A truck driver also reported seeing this woman in the bathroom, staring at herself in the mirror. The truck driver asked the woman what her name was, and she said that she didn't know. Now, as far as I could find, this is considered to be an unconfirmed sighting. And Patricia's mother says that she never drank coffee. So take that for what you will. But there was another confirmed sighting that same night about 200 miles west of Sioux Falls in Murdo, South Dakota. This was between 10 and 11 p.m. at another truck stop diner. The server says she saw who she believed to be Patricia with a man of slight build with curly hair in his 30s. She says they argued and then left the truck stop separately. So if this is Patricia, she does seem to be traveling back west, which would line up with our next confirmed sighting back in Billings, Montana on May 11, 1989. Here, a man says that he saw Patricia on the frontage road next to the I-90, and she asked him which way Washington was. So Patricia's parents and her 21-year-old brother Terry head to Billings. Terry told the Billings Gazette that they showed this man a videotape of Patricia, and the man said that he'd bet his life it was her. Dolly said, quote, "They heard her voice, and that gives better confirmation than just showing a picture." End quote. This small detail about Washington also gave her family a lot of hope, because we know that her ex-boyfriend is from there and currently lives in Washington. So they're thinking maybe she has amnesia but is being drawn to that ex-boyfriend for some reason. But again, if this is Patricia, it seems like she didn't head to Washington just yet. Because another sighting that, according to the Billings Gazette, has been confirmed was just 2 days later on May 13th in the same city, Billings, Montana. A woman says that she saw Patricia at some type of horse sale or horse auction, which would make sense given her background working as a ranch hand. This also confirms some suspicions that her family already had, that maybe Patricia was still trying to pick up odd jobs on ranches for some pocket money while she seemed to be hitchhiking across the country, primarily from truck stops. The next confirmed sighting was again in Montana, but this time in Bozeman, about 150 miles west on May 19th, so about a week after she was last seen in Billings. And you guessed it, this sighting was also at a diner. 2 servers say that they saw who they believe to be Patricia sitting, eating a cinnamon roll, and drinking coffee for several hours before leaving. Now, both of these servers were interviewed by Unsolved Mysteries, and they say that Patricia was concerned with being served quickly. She said that she needed to start shopping by 9 a.m., but for some reason she stayed at the table for quite some time. They say that she seemed lost and even unsure of who she was. One server said that she asked if she was okay, and the woman said that she was fine. And again, Patricia's family swoops in, shows them the video, and like the other witnesses, they say that they have no doubt that the woman they saw was Patricia. By June, Patricia's parents told the Associated Press that they're heading to Idaho and Washington to look for their daughter. At this point, there have been about 60 sightings of Patricia, a few of which have been confirmed. So again, they're thinking that something inside of her is telling her to go west towards Washington. They just don't know exactly where. Because while it does seem that Patricia, or whoever this woman is, was moving west, there didn't seem to be a lot of urgency or any direct path. Thomas Meehan said, quote, "I just don't know where to go. We just have to go somewhere on the I-90, end quote. And here's Thomas Meehan speaking to Unsolved Mysteries. I think it just gives us more insight into how he and his family were feeling at this time.
Well, more than anything else in the world, I want her back with us. When we would then know that she'd be safe, not knowing who she's going to get a ride from. And that's my biggest worry, I think. Just preys on your mind day in and day out. And you pray to God and hope that she's with some good people.
By mid-June, her parents make it to Washington. They link up with Patricia's ex-boyfriend, Kurt, and even his mom, Jean. Both help in the searches for Patricia. And then, the sightings in Washington begin to roll in. This episode of Voices for Justice is brought to you by Quince. I've been trying to be more intentional about what I wear each day. I'm leaning into pieces that feel effortless, comfortable, and still put together. And Quince has been my go-to. The fabrics feel elevated, the fits are flattering, and everything just works without overthinking it. They use premium materials like 100% European linen, organic cotton, and ultra-soft denim. And the best part? Everything is priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. They work directly with ethical factories and cut out the middlemen, so you're paying for quality and craftsmanship, not brand markup. I recently just ordered their tiered linen dress, of course in black. I wanted to pair it with one of my favorite pairs of brown wedges. The problem was, I didn't have a brown purse. So I got that from Quince too. It's one of my favorite outfits. It's easy, effortless, and feels amazing. Especially as we're getting a little bit warmer here in Phoenix. Refresh your everyday with luxury you'll actually use. Head to quince.com/justice for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. That's QUINCE.com/justice for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/justice.
You know that thing where you get an amazing pair of shoes at a really great price and want to tell everyone about it? Yeah, so do we. Here at Designer Shoe Warehouse, we'll give you something to brag about, like the latest styles from brands you love, or the trends everyone's obsessing over, or shoes that make you feel like, well, you. So go ahead, show off a little. Find shoes that get you at prices that get your budget. Head to your DSW store or DSW.com today. DSW, let us surprise you.
At this point, I'm sure Patricia's family is thinking that they're right behind her. All of their suspicions that she's moving west to Washington seemingly are confirmed when all these sightings start to come in. 2 women report seeing her walking on a road near North Bend, Washington. They approach the woman who tells them that her car broke down, but she ultimately declines an offer for a ride. A man in Tacoma reported seeing a woman who looked like Patricia at a truck stop asking people the way to Aberdeen, which is about 80 miles west of Tacoma where her ex-boyfriend lives. This sighting hasn't officially been confirmed as far as I could find, but it is backed up by another sighting. Port of Tacoma employee Don Dozerman says that he saw a woman matching Patricia's description near an I-5 truck stop in early June. And this seems to be a memory that is burned in this man's brain. He says that he remembers this because she was screaming at passing motorists, asking them how to get to Aberdeen and where the 101 was, which goes through Aberdeen. She asked him too, and he told the woman to turn right at Olympia, and the woman asked if that was south. Ron said, quote, "Her voice was quite loud and sharp. I had no problem hearing her," end quote. Now, Ron actually does immediately think that this is Patricia. At this point, her case, and really more so her parents' search for her, have been in the newspapers and news reports across the country. They've done an amazing job getting her case out there. So Ron's thinking that he just cracked this case, that he found missing Patricia Meehan. And he does exactly what he's supposed to do. He calls the Tacoma Police Department. But they tell him to call the Washington State Patrol. And they tell him that because Patricia's parents haven't filed a missing persons report in the state of Washington, they can't do anything. It makes me want to scream. And don't ask me how or why this happened. It's just what the reporting says. So Ron, who sees who he believes is Patricia, does exactly what he's supposed to do and calls the police. And they don't do anything. Whoever this woman was leaves without speaking to an officer. And the next major reported sighting of Patricia happens about 700 miles east of Tacoma, Washington, back in Great Falls, Montana. I know, the route is all over the place. But here we have another member of law enforcement saying that they saw who they believe is Patricia. At 1 a.m. on Saturday, June 24th, 1989, a U.S. Marshals employee was at the Barrel Cafe on Central Avenue in Great Falls, and he spoke to a woman for about an hour. The following Monday, he was shown a video of Patricia Meehan, and he was convinced that it was the woman he spoke to over the weekend. And this time, you guys, they actually find the woman. According to reporting by the Great Falls Tribune, she was interviewed by Sheriff's Detective Dwayne Halverson, who says that while the woman was about an inch taller than Patricia Meehan, her physical appearance and even some of her mannerisms were a complete match. The issue was the woman couldn't provide any identification, but she did say that she was not Patricia Meehan. She said she was a truck driver from a family of truck drivers who moved around a lot. And they don't believe this woman. They are very suspicious of her story. She looks like Patricia, and most of the sightings match up with her being at a cafe at 1 a.m. and being associated with truck drivers. They just are not convinced that this isn't Patricia Meehan, and her dad is ready to make the trip to see for himself. In fact, according to that reporting, the trip was already booked. But the police department is like, hold on, why don't you talk to her over the phone first? So they schedule the phone call. And according to Thomas Meehan, this woman was not his daughter. The sighting is officially confirmed to be false. But the next sighting comes in not too long after, on August 7th in Billings, Montana. 2 employees at the Lindell Auto Sales Shop on Division Street say they believe they saw Patricia open their door and ask if they were a restaurant. Of course, they're not, so they say no and point her to one down the street. Again, it all lines up. The area asking about a restaurant. So Patricia's family asks one of her friends to go down to the auto shop and show them photos of Patricia. And again, the men say that without a doubt, they saw Patricia Meehan. But the woman was never found. Now at this point, there have already been hundreds of sightings of Patricia. But when her case is featured on Unsolved Mysteries in November of 1989, they get about 1,200 phone calls basically overnight with even more sightings. And really, they just keep pouring in through the end of the year and into 1990. And again, a lot of these feel like they would make sense for what we know. Make sense with Patricia's behavior and the area where a lot of the most credible sightings are coming from. One woman says that she saw Patricia at the Spokane Coliseum watching an Ice Capades performance. Again, Spokane makes sense. A few months after that, in March 1990, a couple in Idaho Falls says that they saw Patricia at a medical center cafeteria. They were eating dinner when they overheard a woman discussing a traffic accident. And really, they say that they couldn't help but overhear. They said that the woman was loud and irrational as she spoke to a nurse who eventually left her alone. It was just really a weird encounter for them. But when they got home, they sat on their couch, turned on the TV, and watched a rerun of Unsolved Mysteries where they saw Patricia's face. That's when they started to consider that the woman they saw in the cafeteria was Patricia Meehan. By 9:30 p.m., they called the Idaho State Police to report what they saw. Idaho State Police Captain Eric Mesher told Steve Massey with the Spokane Chronicle that they believe it was a valid sighting. But in the end, they weren't able to find the woman or track down the nurse that the couple says spoke to Patricia. So they put up flyers in hopes that she would be back, but that doesn't appear to have happened. The good news was this rerun of an old Unsolved Mysteries episode was producing new leads. According to the show's producer, they got just under 400 new leads from the rerun, and the police said that this lead from the hospital was one of the best that they'd gotten in weeks. By the 1-year anniversary of Patricia going missing, there were over 5,000 reported sightings of her in the Pacific Northwest alone. It seemed like Patricia was being seen by everyone but her loved ones. The next notable sighting happened in the fall of 1990 at the end of August. This is when another member of law enforcement, this time in Idaho, saw who he believed to be Patricia Meehan in another diner. If you're keeping track, that is the third member of law enforcement who believes that they saw Patricia. And he seemed to clock it right away. He followed the woman out of the diner, and when she threw a newspaper on the ground, he arrested her for littering. Now, this obviously seems like just a way to detain her, get more information, make sure that she can't run. This woman identifies herself as Morning Star, and according to reporting by the Seattle Times, when she went in front of a judge for the charge, she said she was a missionary for God who was just stopping at the diner on her way from Seattle to Montana. Again, she looks like Patricia. She's traveling the same path everyone thinks she's on. But again, it's not Patricia. Patricia's ex-boyfriend Kurt and her parents speak to this woman on the phone, and they all say it was not her. Now, I don't normally dip into Wikipedia for the cases that I cover, but sometimes there's so little information that I will take a look at the page, and really at the sources they've been able to compile. On the wiki page for Patricia and in all the media I found on this case, the real name of this Morning Star woman has never been published. But it says that this woman was confirmed to not be Patricia by using fingerprints. But when you take a look at the Seattle Times article they cite as their source for that, that information is not in that article. Or, like I said, any other article I could find on the case. So take that for what you will. What we do know, according to the Seattle Times, is that the littering charges were dropped against this Morning Star woman, but she was still held in jail as she was deemed mentally incompetent. So while we don't know who this woman was, it seems clear that she was not Patricia.
What they did to your family, you're lucky to make it out alive.
Streaming on Peacock.
These men are going to come after me. Taking them out is my only chance.
Put a bullet in her head.
From the co-creator of Ozark.
Looks like a family was running drugs.
Execution-style killing, it's rare for the Keys. Any leads on who they might have been running for?
The cartel killed my family. I'm gonna kill them. All of them.
MIA. Streaming now. Only on Peacock.
By the end of 1990, there were thousands of potential sightings of Patricia Meehan. A handful of law enforcement officers who swear they saw her. But 2 of the 3 law enforcement sightings were proven to be other women. The truck driver who the U.S. Marshal swears was Patricia Meehan, and this Morning Star woman who that police officer also swore was Patricia Meehan. Which I think begs the very unfortunate question. Were the people who were reporting these sightings of Patricia and even having these sightings confirmed by her family and law enforcement really seeing Patricia Meehan? Or were they seeing these 2 other women? One was a truck driver, or so she said, so it would make sense that a lot of these sightings were happening at truck stop diners. The other, Miss Morningstar, said she was traveling from Washington to Montana. Could she have been hitchhiking at these truck stops along the route that law enforcement and Patricia's family thought she could be traveling, leading to even more reports of people who believe they saw Patricia? Now, I haven't found any statements from law enforcement to say that these 2 women complicated the long list of Patricia Meehan sightings, but I feel like it changes everything. I mean, 2 separate law enforcement officers said that without a doubt they saw Patricia Meehan, and those sightings were confirmed to be false. The third is kind of up in the air at this point. But if these trained officers are getting confused, I think it's fair to assume that at least some of these reported sightings from the public could also be false. It's obviously heartbreaking for Patricia's family, who was draining their savings to travel across the country from South Dakota to Washington chasing down all these leads. When Patricia went missing, Thomas Meehan had recently retired from his position as a firefighter in Pittsburgh. In May 1989, almost right after the incident, he told a reporter that he might be able to afford a few more weeks of travel before running out of money. Still, he stretched every dollar to try to confirm or deny as many sightings as possible. But eventually, his hope began to taper off. At the end of 1994, he told Colleen O'Connor for the Sun News that their family was concerned that Patricia may no longer be alive. Thomas said, quote, "I did just about everything I could to find her. It leads me to think she's not out there. That's what I've come to accept. Of course, we still hope." End quote. He added, quote, "You have to get away from it and forget about it. You can't just dwell on it or it'll drive you crazy." End quote. But of course, that hope wasn't completely gone. He wasn't ready to give up. He also told O'Connor that he'd recently contacted an organization in Florida who helped search for the missing. And Jack Limesand, the undersheriff from Montana who worked this case from day one, said that he had a new stack of sightings about 4 feet high, and he was especially interested in leads from dude ranches or resorts. He added that a lot of locals thought that Patricia might still be in the area of the crash site, living in the desolate wilderness. But he doesn't believe that to be the case. Quote, "As much as we've covered it, it's dang near impossible. There are ranchers up there every day. Someone would have seen an item of clothing or a fragment of bone." End quote. Now, unfortunately, that is some of the last reporting on Patricia's case. I don't know if that organization in Florida ever helped look for her. I just know that despite the major pop of media attention her case had in the years following her disappearance, it seems to have faded as quickly as it came. There's almost no recent reporting on Patricia's case, and both of her parents have since passed away without ever finding out what happened to their daughter. Which brings me to the question, what happened to 37-year-old Patricia Meehan? Well, I can say that her parents have been quoted as saying that she was a good person, a good child for them who would never run away. They don't believe that she had any addiction problems. She didn't have any real reason to leave. This was completely out of the blue according to her family. So next, I think we have to ask, were those sightings really her? Did she have amnesia? That seems to be the prevailing theory. Of course, I'm no doctor, but I think it's pretty common knowledge, and according to the Mayo Clinic, it is absolutely possible for someone to suffer a traumatic brain injury and lose some, if not all, of their memory. I think it's entirely possible that Patricia hit her head in the accident and suffered from amnesia. That being said, I think almost anything is possible in this case. Unfortunately, cases like this, where someone gets in a car accident and is never seen again, feel like some of the hardest to theorize about. She could have had amnesia. She could have been fleeing the scene. She could have been dazed and confused and wandered off. She could have seen this as an opportunity to flee her life and find a new one for herself. And she could have been picked up by someone who meant to do her harm. We could theorize all day. But instead, let's get to our call to action. Please share Patricia's case. If she's alive out there somewhere, she'd be in her 70s now. This case got huge very quickly in the media, and thousands of leads poured in. As that media tapered off, so did the leads. And I guess I do have one last theory for you. I don't think the leads slowing down tell us that something awful happened to her. I think it just tells us that the media coverage was tapering off. More episodes of Unsolved Mysteries aired, other cases dominated the news cycle, and people forgot about Patricia Meehan. I mean, even in that last reporting I found from 1994, the undersheriff said that he had a stack of leads 4 feet high. There is something about this case, something about Patricia that is memorable. It might just take another major media push to get those leads coming back in. So please share. While her parents are no longer with us, I can tell you that these cases, losing someone like Patricia, has a way of haunting a family through many generations. So let's hope that this is the last generation that has to wonder what happened to Patricia Meehan. as a reminder. 37-year-old Patricia Meehan went missing near Circle, Montana after a car crash on the night of April 20th, 1989. She is 5'3", with strawberry blonde hair and gray-green eyes and freckles. At the time of the crash, she weighed approximately 105 pounds and was last seen wearing blue jeans, white high-top Reebok brand tennis shoes with a blue stripe, and was carrying a brown leather purse. Anyone with information is asked to call the McCone County Sheriff's Office at 406-485-3405. But as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time. Voices for Justice is hosted and produced by me, Sarah Turney, and is a Voices for Justice media original. If you love what we do here, please don't forget to follow, rate, and review the show in your podcast player. It's an easy and free way to help us and help more people find these cases in need of justice. And if you're looking for some bonus content or just want to support the show, you can also find us on Patreon. Welcome to the Secret After Show. The studio door is open and our emotional support puppies, Popcorn and Heber, are in the room. Let's jump right into the case. And I have a lot to talk about, but the first thing on my list is really the emphasis that was put on the tiniest snippet of Patricia's mom saying that, she wondered if her daughter was regretting her life choices about not having a husband and children and all of that. And I think it's interesting, like I talked about a few cases ago, right? Sometimes we have to look at these things through the lens of the time that it's happening in. So in 1989, the societal pressure on, not to get too soapboxy, but the societal pressure on women, especially in their early 20s, by like 25, you're out of college, you're married, you're popping out a few kids. And I dare say the societal pressure is still here today, just a little bit lessened. I think doing it a little bit older is not as odd. And there's stats to go behind that. I don't remember exactly what it is. But back in the, late 80s, early 90s, most women Patricia's age were married with children. And those numbers have gone down a lot since then. So really, I think my question is, did Patricia want that typical American dream? Or was she grappling with the idea that maybe she didn't want it? Was caring for kids in some other capacity enough for her? And I think it goes just beyond, oh my gosh, I didn't have kids and I don't have a husband. That's so sad. And it can get deeper into, but is that what I want? I don't know. I don't have a definitive statement for you there because we don't know how she felt. I just think it's worth posing that question. I think on the surface, especially when this aired on Unsolved Mysteries in 1989, was, oh my gosh, a 37-year-old spinster. She must be so sad. But I think we know that there are women who existed and continue to exist who don't feel that way. So I think that's one thing that just kind of gnawed at me. I think especially in the Unsolved Mysteries episode, that was really their catalyst. They were like, oh my gosh, she saw this doctor. She's going to go see this psychologist. She's this unmarried woman at 37. Of course she's not happy with her life. And I just think it's fair to say that we don't know that was the case. They're taking this one small statement from her mom and making it the entire reason. When we know that there could be a million reasons behind it. Maybe she really did want to go be with her ex. Maybe she just wanted to go back home. Maybe the car crash happened and she did have amnesia and didn't really know what was happening. It's very interesting, which does lead me into media discrepancies and all that I have to say about that Unsolved Mysteries episode. We'll get there. First, I just want to say that this is a case without a lot of media, and I think I told you about that in the episode, but it does basically just like stop in the 90s. Like, the media coverage is like, poof, gone. I don't think I've seen a case that quite tapers off like that. It was really surprising to me because usually you can find newer articles on an anniversary. A lot of the local papers will continue to cover it. But for some reason, there's just not much here, which, led to some discrepancies, I'll say. I did address it in the episode. One of the biggest things was which day she was planning on seeing the psychologist. We don't even know if she actually did see that psychologist. But like I told you, I found a direct quote from her dad that says that she was supposed to see that person the morning she went missing. Which, I think leads me to wonder, could something have happened in that meeting? Did that meeting even occur? I didn't go into it in the theories because, like I said, this case is one, it's, and I hate speaking for Julie. You guys know I did a whole season of media pressure with Julie Murray to talk about her missing sister, Maura Murray. But this case really does remind me of Maura's case in that it feels like almost anything could have happened. So instead of going through like 1,000 different theories, I think that naturally occurs in our brains anyway, and I kind of just left it at that. Now, let's go into Unsolved Mysteries, which there is a discrepancy, which, the simple ones always seem to irritate me the most, but they got her age wrong. They said she was 38, not 37. It's not the biggest thing in the world, but especially TV back in 1989, this is supposed to be like a huge production. And by far, it is the biggest piece of media, I dare say, to this day on her case. So again, it's not the biggest thing in the world, but it just doesn't make me feel good about the whole show. When you start off with something as glaringly wrong and as simple to fact check as that, it just makes me question everything. And I will say, I was not a watcher of Unsolved Mysteries growing up. So while I'm sure that the dramatic nature of the show is not going to be a surprise to most of you, I did have some issues with the show. One thing that I thought was extremely over dramatized, and I laugh because it's so silly when I see these things. So they show this photo. They found an undeveloped roll of film of Patricia's. And I didn't talk about it because it's the silliest thing. It's literally her holding the camera and looking into the mirror. It's your typical bathroom selfie. But in the show, they call it the haunting last self-portrait. Then they cut to this psychiatrist who talks about, what may have happened to her. It was so dramatic to me. And I never do this in the after show, but I want to play the clip for you. Here it is.
After Patricia disappeared, her family found a roll of undeveloped film still in her camera. In this haunting self-portrait, she looks out at a world that she may have decided to abandon.
Again, it just feels like something that they were using to fluff up the show. It is the most normal looking picture. She's holding the camera, she's looking straight into the mirror. It's just a bathroom selfie. And I think the larger issue with this episode in general, and I get it, right? They're featuring new cases. They want to generate tips. They're doing a good thing. Do not get me wrong. But this aired in November of 1989, before most of those sightings were deemed as not credible. So throughout this entire episode, it's genuinely presented as Patricia got in this car accident. She very likely has amnesia. They have like doctors on there talking about, how this is likely what happened. And all these sightings they talk about are presented as confirmed sightings. That Patricia got in the car accident, she had amnesia, and she began hitchhiking across the country. And it's like, let us know if you see her out there somewhere at a truck stop. It's very interesting to watch it now. But yeah, I mean, back in the day, they presented it as this is what happened to Patricia Meehan. Keep an eye out, call in a tip. I feel like I talked about the Unsolved Mysteries episode for as long as Patricia's segment actually was. I could go on, but it's just very 1989 Unsolved Mysteries true crime. In the end, I do think that overall it did good, right? It produced a lot of good because it skyrocketed those tips. And I don't know. I have to hope that it wasn't, out of all these tips, like the 1,200 that came in after the episode aired, it feels like they can't all be those two women. And so I have to hope that at least one or two of those was Patricia. But I'm back to theorizing, so let's go back into the hero of the episode. Her family, hands down. Are you kidding? The whole family from across the country in different areas, flying to these different parts of the country to go chase these leads. My goodness. And having the smarts to bring, back in the day, 1989, right? They're bringing like cassette tapes, maybe the micro cassette tapes if they're lucky. But they're bringing, all this equipment across the country to show people. And honestly, what a smart idea, right? Instead of just flyers, they're like, here's this video of her. You can hear her. You can see her move. You can see what her hair looks like, everything. It was just... It felt so innovative for the time, right? Even hiring the helicopter right away. It wasn't stated in any of the sources that I found, but I have to imagine that her dad, Thomas, with his background being a firefighter, he has to have had some type of training. I don't know what that looked like in the 80s or whatever, but it was just so quick, so smart, and they worked so hard. To hear that this man had just retired and, was running out of money looking for her. Oh, it was just so, so sad. And like I said, unfortunately, her parents are no longer with us, but I have no doubt that there is some family member out there who this story has been passed down to, that, hopes to see some type of resolve. So again, please share her case. All that being said, let's go into our segment of hope. Now, this actually comes from podnews.net. This was a press release from November 12th, 2025, and the title reads, After 27 years, Maryland's nurses' murder solved, and American Nightmares podcast helped keep the case alive. The article goes on to read, a decades-old Maryland murder case that was the focus of Season 2 of the true crime podcast American Nightmares has been solved, and the victim's family says the podcast helped inspire investigators to keep pursuing the case. It says that the Prince George County Police announced this week, surrounded by pictures of the victim, that Edward Watts, who died in 2019, was responsible for the 1998 rape and murder of 50-year-old nurse and mother of 3, Sherry Crandell, inside her office at the former Prince George County Medical Center in Cheverly, Maryland. But essentially, her case was, the center of this podcast, featured in this podcast, and eventually it seems to have led to a solve. And Crandell's son, Darren Crandell, credited the podcast with helping keep the case alive. He says, quote, "The FBI told me the genealogy team listened to the podcast and it energized them to keep on working and finally identify the man who committed the crime," end quote. Now, investigators say that it was advances in forensic genetic genealogy and renewed attention to the case that ultimately identified Watts as the killer. American Nightmares host Paul Wagner said, quote, "It's deeply gratifying to know our work may have helped maintain momentum on a case that deserved closure. This is exactly why we tell these stories, to remind people that justice can still be found even decades later," end quote. Now, obviously, that makes our segment of hope because there was a resolution in this case. And through partially, right, this podcast, I think it got me really excited to just keep doing what I'm doing. And I really wanted to share it with you guys because that podcast alone didn't just do it, right? It happens because there are listeners like you who care, listeners like you who share this story, who share the podcast, and get law enforcement more invested, if you will. You know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and I wish it wasn't that way. I wish that every single case that came across, the desk of law enforcement all got the most resources possible. They all got maximum resources, maximum attention, and maximum positive results. But we know, especially with older cases, that doesn't always happen. So really, through this podcast, through the listeners, you guys made this solve happen. And I think that is why I'm here. I think that is so magical, and it gives me so much hope. But as always, thank you, I love you, and I'll talk to you next time.